Wallace. Today I'm going to be discussing the main character from my project Existential Crisis, also referred to as Project EC. Specifically, I will be doing the main character tag. This is a tag that I made with Devasia, Katie, and Stieg many moons ago. In fact, I was supposed to upload this video, I think in February? Back in the winter, I sat down to write the answers and quickly realized that my main character was boring AF, and then I got really embarrassed and couldn't sit down to film this video. But now I have done a full rewrite and I need a video to upload, so here we are. Now, when we created this tag, we wanted to come up with questions that would help people get to know the characters of the stories and projects we were constantly referring to on our channels. I don't know about you, but for me, as a viewer, I tend to engage more when I hear about stories where I have an emotional connection, or at least a semi-firm understanding of who the protagonist of that story is. However, we wanted to make sure that the majority of the questions could be answered without spoiling the actual plot of the story itself. So if the questions seem a little unusual, that's why. They're supposed to give you a sense of who a character is without directly revealing the journey that the character goes through within the story. Now that that little spiel is over, let's get on to the questions. The first question is, what is your main character's name? How did you, the author, choose that name? How does your main character feel about their name? My main character's name is James Alexander Zima. His middle and last name are from his father's side of the family. Alexander is literally his dad's name, and Zima is a Polish surname that means winter. In my head, the first name James is his maternal grandfather's name, but this has literally no impact on the story whatsoever. I never even mentioned his maternal grandfather in the book. James, I think, has a positive but mostly neutral opinion on his name. There's nothing particularly unique about the name. There are definitely other Jameses that attend his school. However, he is family-oriented, he loves his family, and so I think that he is appreciative of the fact that he is named after his father and his grandfather. But it's just not an aspect of himself that he dwells on very often. As for how I came up with the name, well, okay, I think I've mentioned this a million times, but when I initially wrote this project, it was an homage to all of the supernatural stories my sister and I had loved during our high school years, and I really wrote this story with my sister in mind as my main audience. And James is a name that she has loved her entire life as a name for a romantic protagonist. It was just a really easy pick for me when I was thinking what I should name my main character. I knew it had to be James. And I know we are going through a little bit of a cultural revolt against J names, but I don't care, and I'm probably not going to change this name because I did pick it for my sister. Question number 2 is, what is your main character's zodiac sign, even if they live in a fantasy world? Everyone has a vibe. Okay, here's the thing. I think we all know that this was not a question that I suggested for this tag because I have never subscribed to the whole astrology thing. I kind of feel like that's the Taurus in me. So when I say that James is a Leo, I have no idea what that means. His birthday is in August for the simple fact that Project EC takes place over the course of a school year, and I never once mentioned him having a birthday, and so in draft 5 or 6, I realized he needed to have a summer birthday, and that was it. So I have no idea if he's actually Leo-esque. Actually, this is interesting. Earlier today on Instagram, Katie posted a character from one of her stories who she says is a Leo, and I think I remember there being like a description of what a Leo is, so I'm gonna find that really quickly. Okay. A Leo means playful, exuberant, vivacious, and overbearing. No. That is not James at all. Question number 3 is, what is your main character's relationship with their parents or the people who raised them? James has a great relationship with his parents, and sadly that isn't really exhibited in Project EC. The problem is, again, that Project EC takes place over the course of a school year and James attends a boarding school, so there's just not a ton of opportunity for the parents to be present. But he does love them very much, especially his mother. Not to say he doesn't love his father. They don't ever really butt heads. His dad is very supportive. However, there is a slight bit of tension because James has supernatural powers that he actually inherited from his father's side of the family. However, his father is very logical, very kind of scientific in his thinking, very grounded in what he thinks is reality. And so he refuses to believe that James, or anyone else in his family for that matter, is gifted. And that can make communication and understanding hard sometimes, but it doesn't mean they don't love each other. My main goal when writing James's mother and father is I wanted to avoid the trope that wealthy and ambitious people make bad parents, specifically because they don't have time to focus on their children. But I also didn't want to write their relationship as perfectly perfect and no conflict whatsoever, because that also isn't realistic. But long story short, those are some relationships I am excited to explore in further drafts. Question number 4 is, what is your main character's most important memory prior to the start of your story? James's most important memories are those he has of being a very little boy and visiting his grandmother in the Adirondack Mountains. She has a very small cottage in the middle of a forest, and during these visits, she tells him all the stories of their family history and their family abilities. And it's because of these stories that he grows up thinking that the universe has smiled upon his family and that they are something special and that he is special to the universe. And I'm sure you can imagine the mental effect that that would have on someone. James loves his family powers, and prior to the start of the story, he's very confident, almost a little cocky. Not almost, he is cocky. But I think ultimately he has a good heart, so it comes across as charming, but who knows. Anyway, after the inciting incident of the story though, he is forced to re-examine the benefits and costs of that power. And I think in that re-examination, he sees himself and his grandmother and all those stories in a different light. Question number 5 is, your main character walks into the library. What section do they head to first? James loves to read. He has bookshelves that line his entire room, and they are stuffed to the brim with every story he has ever read in chronological order. So they act as like a timeline of his literary education. He loves books that contain their own universe. So if he walks into a library, he is going straight to the fiction section and probably to the classics section. He's the kind of person who wants to read every single book within that 1,000 stories to read before you die huge volume that gets published every few years. And I wouldn't necessarily call him pretentious for this, because he does enjoy the classic style of writing and he engages with the stories. So he's not pretentious, but I'm pretentious for writing him this way because I rarely enjoy classic literature. But look, this story is meant to have dark academia vibes, and there's nothing more dark academic than a good, quiet, dim library. Oh, actually, I'm adding on a little note because he actually spends a ton of time in a library in Project EC. So if we go off that, then the first place James will go when walking into a library is the nonfiction section. And specifically, he will go to a section that has reference books on fairy tales and paranormal folklore. Question 6 is, would your main character survive the Oregon Trail? Okay, so I have really thought this one over and I've struggled with it. James is obviously used to the modern comforts of the world. I mean, he grew up in New York City. He grew up on the Upper West Side of New York City. He has had literally everything handed to him. He has never had to fight for anything in his life. Pre-inciting incident, I should say. So I think all of those facts count against him. However, his power would be so useful on the Oregon Trail. So useful. If I was gonna do the Oregon Trail and I was able to pick any power to have that I thought would give me the best chance of survival, I would be very tempted to pick James's power. In fact, I think the only power I would choose over his power would be teleportation, because you could
just, you'd start off in Missouri or wherever they were and just boop, and suddenly in Oregon. But if that was not allowed, then yeah, I would definitely pick James's power.
So I guess my answer is he has a solid shot. Question number 7 is, what would your character ask for if they made a deal with a crossroads demon? I love this question. I think it can reveal so much about a character and their morality. I think it tells you what they want most in the world. I think it tells you if they'd be willing to sell their soul for something. I love this question. Sadly, I will not be answering it. Here's the reason. Supernatural deals play a fairly big role in Project EC, not deals with the crossroad demon, although that is an element I would love to explore in a future story. But yes, supernatural deals play a big role. So I actually know the exact answer to this question, but if I revealed it, it would literally spoil the entire story. So take from that what you will. And the final question of the main character tag is, what will your character think about on their deathbed? Before the start of the story, I think James would just think about his parents. If he was really dying, you know, they are the people in his life who have shown him unconditional love, and I think that's what you would go to comfort yourself in your final moments. I think there would also be a part of him that would be like, what the hell? How is this happening? How am I dying? Like, that's not supposed to happen at all. I am the main character. I mean, he is the main character of his own life. He doesn't realize he's also my main character, but pre-start of Project EC, he like definitely thinks he's the main character. But if we are thinking of post-Project EC James, assuming he lives to a ripe old age, then I think for the most part, there's just one person who he would really think of on his deathbed. And I think he would just be very grateful that that person was in his life. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. So there you have it. That is James Alexander Zima, the answers for him for the main character tag. I'm going to be tagging 3 people to answer the questions in this tag if they so choose. 1, Jessica Williamson, 2, Diane from Diane Marie Writes, and 3, Marta from Marta Can Pixel. Marta has already done this tag, but she told me I could tag her again, and I think that's funny, so I'm tagging her again. I'll have all 3 of their channels linked below, as well as Katie Devacious and Steegs, and I've also linked several other main character tag videos as well. If you end up doing this tag, please let me know, because I've literally been binging them and I cannot get enough of these. Like I said, these help me connect to characters so clearly, and as I am the center of the universe, it just makes sense that all the rest of you would use up your valuable time and effort and skills to make videos specifically to help me. Clearly, James and I have some similarities. Anyway, I'm excited to meet everybody's fabulous main characters, but until then, go be happy, go be healthy, and go right. Bye.